So I've spoken through what these critical areas are, which is the iris, the shutter, the white balance and the gain. Now these are all the areas that you're going to be driving in manual. So we've put the camera into manual, press the full auto button, it shows us we're in manual. Now if you want to adjust the iris, it's as simple as pressing the button on the back of the camera labelled iris, and you will see f2.8, which is what I'm shooting at now, has been highlighted. Now what this means is you can now adjust that parameter. So if I move the stick at the back of the camera, which is labelled push and adjust and VOL for volume, basically this little stick lets you increase or decrease the exposure. So if I push it up, you'll see that we're all the way up to 1.8 on the lens, which means we're letting as much light through that lens as possible. If I push it the other way, I can go down as far as f8, which is the smallest aperture on the lens, meaning it lets as little light through the lens as possible. Now just another point worth mentioning in regards to exposure is you've also got an ND filter, which is a neutral density filter. And if we put that in, switch it to on, that will effectively close down the amount of light which comes through onto the sensor. So that's yet another way to help control your exposure by switching in the ND filter. Okay, just to backtrack, you press iris, you can see you're active on your adjustments because it's actually highlighted in black, whereas all the other parameters are on white. And as I move the stick, we can see the shifts in exposure. Okay, so we've gone through adjusting the iris. If we press shutter on the back of the camera, you'll see that the 1/50th of a second, which is what I'm shooting at, is now in black, and the f-stop, f2.8, is in white. So when it's in black, that means that parameter is active for you to adjust. So again, using the same stick that you use to adjust the f-stop, you can use the same stick to adjust the actual shutter speed. So if I wind that one way, you can see I put the shutter all the way up to 10,000, 4,000, 1/500th, 1/250th of a second, 1/80th of a second, and you can actually increase the amount of light coming through by shooting at 1/25th of a second. Because what this means is that if we think again back to the film days, how long the image is actually being exposed for. So here I'm adjusting it for 1/25th of a second, which means it's got more time to expose that image than if it was shot at 1/50th of a second. If I knock it back again, 1/12.5 of a second, all the way to 6.25. So that means that image is being exposed for a very long time. Now I tend to shoot at 1/50th of a second, and if there's a lot of light, I'll push it the other way to 80, 120, 2/50th, and that'll cut down the light coming onto the sensor. And likewise, if there's not a lot of light, you can actually open it up to 1/25th of a second, or even 12.5, 12.5 of a second. The downside is, once you start adjusting the shutter speed and getting down to the slower shutter speeds, that means that your image will get more jerky. So really, 1/50th of a second is ideal. You can shoot at 1/25th of a second if you like, and you can certainly go down to the much higher shutter speeds, 1/500th, 1000, which will cut down the light coming through. And if you need to open up more, 12.5 frames a second, 6.25 frames a second. But like I said, that will result in more jerky motion.